Douglas Murray, is there a problem actually in the Holy Book, in the faith, or is the problem in some of those, like this gentleman, and their interpretation of it?
Well, we're very lucky that most Muslims don't think anything like Anjem Choudhury, or we'd really be in trouble. Most Muslims, both in Britain and across the world, are law-abiding, decent people for whom their faith is an important part of their lives. However, there is an awkward thing about Islam, which is that Islam's religion, its founder, was a more violent man than, for instance, the founder of Christianity. I'd give you an example. I mean, if Christ, I'm not a Christian, but I have no truck in this thing, but if Christ had been a warrior, had killed people he captured, Christianity's history would be even more violent than it has been. I'd give you...
Douglas Murray, again, flawlessly delivers a powerful critique of Islam, shutting down a Muslim political leader who is known for incessantly advocating for the Sharia law in the UK. Like a lion, Douglas strikes at the heart of Islam, the Prophet Muhammad, and challenges the deceitful presentation of the Prophet Muhammad as a peaceful religious leader. Douglas Murray delves into the controversial topic and exposes Muhammad to be a warlord, incomparable to Jesus Christ in Christianity, who never took up a sword for a military expedition. But anyways, let's hear from the Muslim leader. Maybe we'll get some perspective.
Well, I think that one needs to appreciate that the word Islam is derived from the root word istislam, which means submission. Therefore, the Muslim is the one who submits entirely to the Sharia, the divine law of God. Hence, toleration is something which is, if you like, defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God. Therefore, if something is in accordance with the Sharia, we tolerate it. If it is outside of the Sharia, we cannot tolerate it. Hence, for example, Islam will tolerate non-Muslims to live among the Muslims within the Sharia under an Islamic state. Their life, wealth, their honor, their dignity will be protected. They will get the basic needs of food, clothing and shelter. But at the end of the day, we cannot tolerate adultery, fornication, we cannot tolerate apostasy, not because this is from our own whims and desires, but this is enshrined within the Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger Muhammad.
So what should happen to an adulterer?
Well, the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, as narrated in the Quran, that the one who commits adultery, he will be stoned to death, and the one who commits fornication, who's not married, they will get 100 lashes, and that will be done publicly. And for your information, if you look in the history of Islam, there were, for example, only about 60 reported rapes when the Sharia was implemented. There were only about 120 hands ever cut. So it is not only a harsh punishment which is fitting, but it is also a great deterrent within society, and it will rid society of many of the ills
Britain would be a better
that we
place.
have. I believe that Britain would never be better than when the Sharia has been implemented.
The Muslim leader boasts that Islam is what is best for society because of its harsh and excessive punishments of criminals, which supposedly act as deterrents from crime. But what happens if this control is oppressive? What if it is rooted in a harsh and outdated holy book? Any astute observer of the state of human rights in the Muslim world can demolish hollow rhetoric that aims to project an idealistic image of Islam on the outside world. Such an observer is compelled to highlight the complete absence of human rights and individual freedoms in all those nations where their laws are based on Sharia and not on human reason. Let us observe realistically the present state of affairs in the Arab Islamic world so that we may not be duped by the empty claims of the Islamists. And now to Douglas Murray.
If Christ, I'm not a Christian, but I have no truck in this thing, but if Christ had been a warrior, had killed people he captured, Christianity's history would be even more violent than it has been. I'd give you one other example. When a woman is brought in adultery to Jesus, he says, he who's without sin casts the first stone. When Muhammad has a woman brought in adultery to him, he orders her to be stoned. This would be a very different outcome. Now, fortunately, as I say, there's no doubt about this. About the nature of Muhammad as a beginner of a religion. There's no doubt about that, but there is also no doubt about the fact, as I say, that most Muslims don't behave in that way. Because religion is open.
Sorry, Douglas, that's untrue. It's untrue. You've deliberately picked on one example, and that is Jesus Christ.
the prophet of God. Before that, there were many other prophets that Christians also believe in, such as the prophets of the Old Testament, who launched wars, who were kings, King Solomon, King David. Hold on, Douglas, I'm making a point here, which is that prophets during those times, some of them fought, some of them didn't fight, some of them it's disputed whether they fought. The point is that all religions are interpreted. We can't say here that Islam is one thing or another.
But Jesus' message is very clear. He never said to stone anyone to death, Jesus, did he?
I think it's disputed, even the fact that the Prophet Muhammad stoned people to death. That's not a fact. That's not a fact. And today we have people like Anjum speaking the way he just did. I think the difference is that the problem today happens to be that many Muslims have subscribed to something we call Islamism, whereby they believe Islam is a political ideology that must be forced upon people their preference is at the end of a sword.
Is he a real Muslim?
Well, can I just
is he a real Muslim?
Yes, I'm a Muslim.
Do you consider me a Muslim? In the Quran, Allah said, He said, whatever the Prophet brought, take it. Whatever he left, leave it. So everything is enshrined within the Quran, which is explained by the Sunnah of the Prophet's sayings, actions, consent. But can I just say that, the lady there is not the only one from the Council of Ex-Muslims. Majid al-Nawazin is a well-known sellout, and he's a non-Muslim, he's a Catholic. So I think that you need to have Muslims to talk about Islam.
What's the punishment? What's the punishment in hell? What's the punishment in hell?
You cannot ally with the American and British establishment.
What's the punishment waiting for him?
What's
the punishment waiting for him in hell?
Well, he will be in the hellfire. But the point is
that
he needs to retake his shahada.
What would you do to me?
Let's talk in a minute about apostasy.
Douglas Murray asserts an objective fact about Muhammad stoning people for adultery. But surprisingly, the supposed ex-Muslim disagrees vehemently and still tries to defend their prophet Muhammad by questioning the validity of the facts. Their prophet Muhammad stoned women for adultery while he was alive, and this is not disputed in the Islamic world because the Hadith Sahih Bukhari, the book most trusted after the Quran by most Muslims, has several sunnah regarding stoning, so do not be deceived. Back to the video.
But yeah, you can in a minute. Harris Rafiq.
Yeah, just a couple of points. First of all,
did the Prophet order people to be stoned to death?
Right. Okay. That case itself was where the woman insisted that she had punishment. There was one case where the woman was stoned, and that was when she came to the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, and said, "I have committed adultery." The Prophet, peace upon him, turned his face away. She asked him again, "I've committed adultery." Only when she asked the third time for a punishment was the punishment insisted on. That is the only.
Should he not have still said no?
I beg your pardon?
Should he not have still said no?
No, she insisted that she be punished. But coming back to the original point, in terms of Sharia, first of all, there is nothing in the British law that actually prevents me from practicing my faith. So there's no need for Sharia law in this country. And secondly, there's nothing. And secondly, the other thing is, there is no compulsion in Islam. In terms of Anjum classifying myself or Majid or anybody else as a non-Muslim,
Sharia, then maybe we could call you a Muslim.
Well, at the end of the day, there are three things that make up a Muslim: Islam and Iman, and from that we get the Sharia. There's the other thing that Anjum seems to be forgetting about, that is tasawwuf, the state of ihsan, being a better human being, worshipping your Lord as if you can see him, because even if you can't, he can see you. That's how you treat your labours, the spirit of the Lord.
Okay, what is the problem? Mariam, you abandoned your faith. Mariam, you're an ex-Muslim.
Atheist now, but I think this question is wrong, and this is exactly the reason why. The problem is you can find intolerance in every religion, including in Islam, but the reason Islam is such a focus today is because it is the banner of a political movement, and that's where we need to put the finger on. Anjum Chowdhury represents that political movement, that actually, it's not a question of, oh, he's an intolerant man, we can just ignore him. The problem is that this movement makes laws, it actually stones people to death in the 21st century, it hangs 16-year-olds for acts incompatible with chastity. It denies women the right to divorce, to child custody. It imposes sexual apartheid on millions of people. We have to make a distinction between Muslims.
So it's not to do with Islam, it's to do with people like him.
It is, it's the political Islamic movement, and actually the first victims and the first front of resistance against this movement are people who are either Muslims or being labeled as such. So here's the problem.
Listen to this excerpt from an article the political Islamists would have you believe. We are a tolerant people. With us, there is no compulsion in religion. We don't punish apostates or force them to return to Islam. Buddhists living among us are free to build their temples. As to our Christian brothers and Jewish cousins, they have all the freedom to build their houses of worship without any hindrance. Among us, you are as free to change religion as you are to change your shirt. There is true freedom in Darul Islam. A Copt is a citizen and not a dhimmi. A Shiite enjoys the same privileges as a Sunni in a Sunni majority land. The same thing obtains for a Sunni living in a Shiite majority country. The Ahmadis and the Baha'is are well treated. In fact, all religions are properly treated in our Arab Muslim world. May Allah protect us from the evil designs and calumnies of the West, who are very jealous on account of our blessings, the blessings of justice, peace, and Islam. Firstly, anyone who takes seriously such propaganda is a fool for believing such lies. And always remember Matthew 7:15. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravening wolves. Furthermore, if you are interested in seeing how such propaganda is destroyed, I will leave a link in the description to where Jacob Thomas elegantly shuts down political Islamism in the Sharia. Now let us conclude this topic with the man of the hour, Douglas Murray.
We see these surveys and people thinking, and a disturbing amount of people saying they would justify violent action if it were Douglas Murray, there are some disturbing young people being far more radical. Disturbing surveys about 7/7 and 9/11 come out, don't
Absolutely, and the younger they go in this country at the moment, the more likely they are to be radical. This is the problem, and the previous speaker was absolutely right about this, that the politicized version of Islam is the real problem at the moment. Most faiths take a long time to sort of work themselves out, to be interpreted, for people to drop verses that aren't any good. Christianity and Judaism, many centuries ago, got through this process of dropping the wicked and the violent verses. Islam has to do that now, and it has to do it fast.
But isn't that compromising your religion, editing it for the times in which you live? Isn't that let's see what people think.
Is Islam an intolerant religion? Douglas Murray raises a critical point about the excessive, harsh laws that Islamic countries still enforce today. But in their eyes, they are just following the teachings and ways of the Prophet Muhammad, the Quran, and Hadiths. So why would they see any wrong in the way they govern and act within the world? But there is one key point to remember. The fact that Christianity has spread throughout the world is one of the reasons why we all think that these Islamic penalties are severe and disproportionate. Human dignity is provided by New Testament Christianity when it is correctly understood and practiced. Moreover, Christians respect and venerate the Old Testament because they think it was inspired by God during its own time and contains eternal truths. However, they also hold that Jesus Christ fulfilled this sacred text, so people no longer have to be stoned to death for a sin like adultery. Sins are dealt with in a new way under the new covenant, forgiveness and restoration. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe.